is a little guide on Chromebooks that I've created. The idea of this is to help people that are new to Chromebooks, but also people that perhaps have a wider knowledge and have had one for a while, need a refresh, or want to discover more, and there's loads of links available at the end of the presentation. So the first thing I'm just going to share is how we have utilised them at Puttridge High School. So we've decided to take on the SAMR model 2013, and essentially we want to utilise Chromebooks as a development of teaching and learning rather than in place of things that already exist. So the idea of this is there are 4 key principles. So using them as a substitution, are you looking at Google Maps instead of an atlas? For augmentation, to explore earthquakes, looking at Google Earth. For modification, using a seismograph app to simulate different earthquake magnitudes, or to redefine something within a lesson. And all of these things are essentially based on the fact that we didn't just want a Chromebook to replace something unless it was actually adding to the teaching and learning within the classroom and the student and the teacher's environment. So the first thing I'm going to go through is the essential basis of Google Classroom, and it all revolves around the 9 little dots that I refer to as the Rubik's Cube, which you'll find in the top right-hand corner if you open your emails. Essentially, if you click on these dots, you have access to everything Google. You can add on additional things as well. You can scroll through all of those things. Those are the ones I'm going to talk through in a moment, but there's obviously plenty more available. If any of the apps are not listed and you want them, you can search for them. It might be that your organisation then needs to whitelist those apps, but there's so much out there that is, quite frankly, amazing. So if I click on my Google Drive, this is what it looks like. Now, I have ordered all of the folders. I've colour-coded them. I've gone years. I've then got leadership bits. And essentially, this is for you to create however you wish to. You can have it as a list of things. You can have it as folders like this. You can have links to folders like the Quality of Education folder I've got there. And that's because that's a shared folder on a shared drive. And I essentially wanted a shortcut to make it simpler to get to it. On the left-hand side is the box New, where you create new folders. There's then My Drive, which is what your drive will look like. Shared drives, if anything's been shared with you on a school or trust or wider level, shared with me. This is where all the documents will go to if someone sent something via email, recent, starred and binned. Now what you can do is when you get sent things, is you can click to add it to your Google Drive. If you just click to add it, it will go straight into your kind of main homepage drive as such, and then you can drag and drop. Or when you click on it, you can click Organize and you can select which folder you want it to go into. So I guess the next thing to have a think about is Google Classroom. This is a little snapshot of part of my Google Classroom. It's where all of the folders are for each of your classes on your timetable. At Puttridge High School, it's done automatically for us through Google and our IT company. And all we have to do is click on a class folder to access that class and to set work for them. The options you'll get come up at the top, so you can stream to your class, you can set classwork, you can look at the people within and the marks. The stream is essentially like a mini news feed for your class. If you want to give a message before a lesson or a reminder of homework, you can pop it on there. Students can respond and ask any questions as well, so it's quite nice. The classwork is where you set everything, your assignments, tasks, quizzes, anything that you want to set, you click there. People obviously are the students within your class. If any students leave or if new ones join, you can just add them on. And marks is where if you choose to mark online, these will be stored and it's almost like an online mark book for you. So if I go on to Classroom to create a piece of work for my students, I literally click on Create at the top and then I select what I want it to be. So I've just done a little snapshot of what the assignment box looks like. You put in your title, any instructions. You then have 2 options. So if you've already made a Google slide or a PowerPoint and you want to just add it on, you literally attach it like a normal attachment. Or if you haven't done anything but want to add it there and then, you click on Create and it gives you options of what to create and you can automatically do it. The only thing you need to be aware of is you can either set a piece of work, so I could set an assignment and have it duplicate so each student has a copy, for example, if it was a longer exam style question, or if I wanted all the students to be able to access the same document and comment on each other's work and view each other's work, then I would just select one. The other thing to ensure is that you click that students can edit the document if you want them to work on it, if it's not just a worksheet or a PowerPoint that you want them to view. On the right hand side, when you then click on this, there are then the options for the class you want to assign it for, the date, the time frame, all things like that, which you can then set for those students. The next thing then I thought I'd show you is just Google Slides. So this is just a little example of a simpler version of what I was setting for some of my students during when we were teaching remotely. And what I wanted essentially was for them to be able to support each other and comment. So this is just a made up task for today. And if I just escape the PowerPoint, I've got it loaded at the top. And the idea is that I normally had one slide at the top with some information, and then I would create a template slide, again, simple version here, and then duplicate it. I would ask the students to pop their name at the top, up here. They would then complete the task in a relevant box or boxes, depending on what it was. And then the secondary part of the task was for them to go back and to peer assess someone else's work. Now, because this is one set of slides that all of the class has access to, it meant that they could quite simply click on someone else's work and highlight it. We do what well and even better if in pink and green, so green is great, think pink, and I encourage the students to use the tools to actually highlight the text and make it easier for everyone to understand and see. The other thing I would say is that my students hadn't done this and we hadn't trialled this before we went to working remotely, and they were absolutely brilliant at it. Some of them obviously picked it up quicker than I would have done, and they were sending me things and ideas that we could do to make it more interactive, which was also fantastic. So the next thing is, whilst it loads, is having a look at Google Docs. Now, Google Docs is what I would use if I wanted to set a longer written task or answer, assignment, assessment, anything, a piece of coursework, anything in that sense. So this again is a little snapshot, just a completely made up activity that I've done for the purpose of this video. And what it happens is at the top you then have your Google Doc, you change your title, you can then have a task. Now you can do it the same as the Google Slides if you want the students to all be on one document. And I did do that once with a piece of creative writing so that they could read each other's work and then provide feedback. Or you, this is one way you can set it to assign one per student, so they have one each. If you do this, then when you go on Classroom and you look at the students' folders, you will see their work assigned by their name, and you quite simply click through to view the different pieces of work. Now, the thing that is for me most impressive about Google Docs is that you can highlight things and then you can add comments. So that's one I've already added. So if I highlighted that and click on that button, I could then add a comment as the teacher. I can be on this at the same time as all the students. They can then respond to my comments. You can make suggestions at the top, or you can edit the document directly. I normally just make suggestions, and then you end up with this lovely thread down the right hand side where you've made comments and they've responded. And then what I do is I get the students to develop and I ask them to change the font color so that I can see the things that they have changed in response to my comments and essentially the progress they've made. The other thing that's quite amazing about this is if you go to File and Language, which is down at the bottom, which you can't see because it's behind my video, you can then select if you want to translate it into different languages. Students can do that themselves, or you can do that for them, but it's just a really straightforward way to try and make it more accessible if you have EAL students within your lessons. The final thing I should say about this is if you set this as an assessment and you're writing similar comments back to different students, to save time, you can create a comment bank So I could turn this, for example, into a comment bank, and then it means that you can start to write the initial opening of that comment and essentially filters it in for you. The next thing then is Google Forms. Google Forms is something that was completely new to me when we first moved over to Classroom. I was perhaps a little bit more aware of docs and slides because obviously it's just the same as Word and PowerPoint, whereas Google Form I've never come across before. What I would say is that it's actually really straightforward to do. You can have a play around and create some forms. And again, this is just one that I've made. That's a super simple, little bit of fun to have a look at. So I've done a form here. As the person that's made the form, I can view the questions and the responses. What you can do is provide students with the link to that form. You could post it on their Classroom, on their stream if you wanted, or it could they could literally just, it could be on the screen and they can just type it in, and they go through and they answer the questions. So because I'm on this is how you would create the form. So for example, if you want to add a question, you just press that there. You can change on what type of question. So I could change this to tick boxes if I wanted to, and those would be the columns and those would be the rows. I'm just going to switch it back, obviously, to make it make sense. You can put in, if you want to then actually do a quiz, you can do incorrect answers. You can get them to show you the answers at the end of it. It's absolutely genius. You can tick the box here if you don't want students to miss questions. And then as the person that created the form, the bit that I love the most and love sharing with the students is then the responses. So this is just me doing some snapshot responses. This little icon at the top here creates a spreadsheet for you. So if you wanted to then store this information or to have a look at a later time in more detail, it creates a spreadsheet with all of the responses. What I do in a lesson though is that I will then show the responses like this, so we can see as a class the things we got right and the things we got wrong, and what the most incorrect or correct answers were. It can help you address misconceptions. It can help you as a teacher be aware of what you need to reteach and what you need to perhaps review and look back on. The other thing I'd say is that that is the button you need to click if you want to stop accepting responses. The 3 dots are what you click if you want to delete all responses and start again. So if you did it with one class and then you wanted to completely refresh it and use it with another class, you can do. In terms of then sending the form, if you wanted to send it, you could send the link to all of the students. You can either send it via an email, you can copy the link, which is what I normally do. Normally click to shorten it, and then it's more straightforward, and you just then send that to your students. In terms of settings then, it depends upon your organisation. If you want, you can collect email addresses so you can see which students have said which in particular. If you don't have a name bit on your form, you can also decide how you want it to be restricted or not restricted. But when you send the link over, if you choose to do it that way, then that will just automatically let students access the form. Okay, if I go back to the main presentation again. So the next thing I have considered is the use of apps. We provided our staff with a little guide on our view of Chromebooks, how we wanted to utilise them as a teaching and learning tool, and the link at the top is a link to that, and I'll show that at the end. As the end of that, we included lots of apps that we thought were good starter apps really for people to have a look at, that also were relevant to different subjects, and we've kind of included that at the end of the document. One that I'm just going to show you very briefly is Padlet. Now I really like Padlet. I use it as a assessment for learning tool for students to add their comments. I use it as an assessment tool separately as well to view things. I like to do it as a starter. So what's our knowledge about a certain topic, and then they all add on their points. So Padlet is just one of the apps that's available. You don't have to do it on Classroom. You can do it on a normal computer, but then students with Chromebooks can access it immediately. You can share the link on their stream or via Classroom. And essentially what happens is you have a little Padlet that comes up like this. You as a teacher can add on the central idea, and then students can click on, and then they can add on their response. Now what happens is that depending on the type of Padlet you click, they can group responses together, they can link ideas. If something comes up multiple times, you can choose to make the font go bigger and it get larger and larger, so you can see what are the most common responses. I guess it's now a virtual way of the old sort of pop a post-it note on the board that people used to have as an exit ticket. If you are eager to discover more, Emma Darcy of Chiltern Learning Trust, who's the IT genius, has kindly provided us with the links that she shares as part of the Google Classroom strategies and courses that they run. So here's a link to Google, and then I've just included her table that she provided me with, which essentially has everything on it and links to everything that you could possibly need. It's really comprehensive. It obviously covers the simpler things to the more developed initiatives and apps that are available. And then finally, the only other thing I would share is our policy and little kind of guide that we made at Puttridge High School, which again includes some of the things that I've already spoke about, but just gives you an overview and a starting point if you are new to Google Classroom and if you're new to Chromebooks. That gives a little bit more information on each of the apps that you've seen on that PowerPoint slide, and just how to utilize Chromebooks and Classroom to the best of your ability within a class and lesson. Thank you very much.